Hi everyone. I just wanted to hop on here and share something that I feel would be helpful for certain people, and also helpful for me to share as well. And I was going to do this via IG Live, but I feel like it's better to do it via a pre recorded video, um, so that I can really get out what I want to share. And before I do share, I just want to say what I will be talking about um, will most likely be quite triggering and activating for people. So please do look after yourself, maybe be in a safe space with some silence and a cup of tea or something like that. And yeah, just whatever works for you, because this is, well, it could be quite big for some people to hear. Um, so I'll get straight into it. As a lot of you know, um, when I was 9, my mum was diagnosed with leukemia, and a few months later, she sadly passed away at the age of 35. Um, and so I am 36, and a few days ago, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is it's a cancer of the lymph nodes, basically. So I have known about this potential diagnosis for about two months. But what happened is in January this year, I found a small, it's just there, a lymph node had swollen. And so I called the doctor straight away, not out of panic, but just because I'm that sort of person. I am in tune with my body, and I just like to be sure and safe rather than leave things. So I called the doctors, they did a blood test, everything was clear, but they also booked me in for a scan. And so I went for a scan, and then I was referred for a biopsy because the scan showed that this was quite large underneath the surface as well, and that's quite unusual. So then I had a biopsy, and when I had a biopsy, it was about 2 months ago, and the ENT surgeon did say to me, which I was not expecting, he was like, I'm 98 to 99% sure that this is either lymphoma or TB. So I, completely not expecting any of this, went back to my brother and sister-in-law's house, which is where I'm staying at the moment, and I had to start processing that because, here I was presented with this very, very high statistic that I had one of two potentially very serious illnesses. And I remember um, feeling a variety of things, which I'll go into in a moment, but I'll just finish this technical part of the story. Um, so that first biopsy was inconclusive. I also had a CT scan. The CT scan actually did not show signs of lymphoma or TB, and it said that this lymph node was a reactive lymph node rather than a diagnostic sort of issue. So I felt, pretty kind of positive still. And then I had to have another biopsy, obviously, because they want to be really sure. I had another biopsy. This time, the ENT surgeon was really quite aggressive in getting what he needed. And then he did get what he needed because I received a proper diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma. I received it this Wednesday, but I have been aware of this potential coming for, like I said, past couple of months. I don't know much about this cancer, and I'm not gonna spend a lot of time like looking it up and, you know, causing potential fear or panic within myself. But I do know that it does affect younger people, and that it does have a more positive prognosis, and most people do recover. So that's a real blessing. That's a real positive. Um, but really, what I wanted to talk about in this video is not really the ins and outs or the technicalities of cancer as such. I actually wanted to talk about how this has been for me, and on a soul perspective, how I have processed this, because I feel like this would be really helpful to share and really helpful for people to hear. So last year, I was living on my own for an entire year, which was like the best year of my life. I had just broken up with my partner of 4 years, and we were traveling together. And it was a very unexpected breakup in many ways, but also expected when I look back. And I came back to Wembley in the UK, and I was staying with a beautiful friend of mine who I hadn't known for a very long time, but what is time when you connect with people on a soul level? I was staying with an absolute beautiful friend of mine, and a real soulmate, and I came to her house, completely kind of shocked, broken, sad, upset, triggered, all of the things. And just not knowing what to do with my life, not knowing what was going on. And it was a real blessing to be with her. And I just used that time to process what was going on. And Wembley actually happened to be where my mum was raised as a teenager and where she went to school. So it really felt like I was being brought home to her energy, and I was being held by her. So it was really significant in many ways because I hadn't actually been to Wembley more than a couple of times in my life. So this felt very significant. I ended up staying in a flat for a year on my own, and it was such a beautiful time. But the first few months, I was just on the floor, like crying for everything. When you sob and it's just like a whole body kind of sob, and you just can't stop it, and you don't really want to stop it because it's just like it just needs to come out. I spent I think every day for like probably about 4 months just on the rug in the kitchen, just like allowing myself to sob and release all of the pain and the shock, not just of my previous breakup, but like everything that had culminated for me to feel that much pain, everything in my life, like all the trauma, just all the insecurities, like literally everything, grief, just everything came out. And I was lucky because I was on my own, and I know that not everyone can do that. So I was really using that opportunity because I knew that it's quite a rare opportunity to be on your own and to really process that. And then me and my very close friend, who was referred to himself as Daniel Edmund for many years, but now is called Firefall. We built a company together called Energetic Conversations, and it is a consultancy company which helps heal many different energetic maladies and symptoms, which we now know as racism, misogyny, a variety of like different mental health issues within corporations. So that is our company. We want to go into corporations and help them heal from the root using certain energetic techniques that we have learned to look at the subtle energy dynamics. So we built that company. We created a plan, and the plan was that Firefall would leave to go to America in October, and then I would join him this year around April time. So everything that we did then was to fulfill this plan. At the same time, I started studying Vedic astrology. I'm already a qualified horary astrologer, which is a more Western way of calculating of astrological calculations. But I started learning Vedic astrology, which is the ancient Indian form of astrology. And then I also joined the New Earth Mystery School, which is run by Mariam Hasna. And these two things completely transformed my life, especially the New Earth Mystery School, because I learned a whole new range of energetic techniques to help me clear my auric field, clear other people's energies, clear very old stagnant energetic patterns from my energy field. So I still do, every day I do certain energy techniques to clear and release all energy which is not mine, and call my own energy back, because we lose and give away our energy in various transactions and in various traumatic situations and conflict and things like that. So I started doing these techniques, and I noticed probably around 7 or 8 months into the year, I started to feel joy. And I'm not someone who people would necessarily say was a joyful person, because I'd been through so much grief, abuse, you name it, like all of that. So to feel joy was like incredible. Like, and it came a different way than I thought. I always expected joy to be like just this like wild excitement that is like uncontrollable and like just giddy, but it wasn't like that. It was just this very beautiful sense of peace and calm and connectedness to the divine, and just like a real deep appreciation for life and a real gratitude for everything that's in it, even the challenges. So that was so beautiful to start feeling that. And one of the massive things that I did every day last year was I went to the forest and I communed with Mother Earth. I put my hand on certain trees and I spoke to them, and I just allowed myself to receive guidance from Mother Earth, and just really, really deeply, deeply connected with her energy. So all these things happened. I also had a variety of health issues last year. So I had a skin cancer scare around April or May. And that was around the first time when I actually started to think, oh my gosh, what if I have cancer? And like, what if I die? And I remember sitting looking out the window and actually like having all this panic come up. And then all of a sudden just thinking, well, I want what my soul wants for me. If that's what my soul wants for me, if that's what my soul has chosen, who am I to stand in the way of that? As my smaller egoic self, I bow down to my soul's wisdom. Like, I trust at this stage my soul's wisdom and my soul's choices. And my soul's wisdom to me is related to divine wisdom, because we're all connected to the divine, however we wish to call that, God, the divine, great spirit, the great mystery, all that is. So for me, it was like, I want what God wants for me. I want what the divine wants for me. And so that was the first time I really started to appreciate what surrender was, because I was like, well, me being stressed about this and feeling fearful of death isn't actually going to help the situation, because whatever is best for me is happening. I may not, as an ego, as a human, and in my egoic mind, I may not really want this. I may not have planned for this, but this is happening anyway. And if it's happening, I trust that there is a greater reason for it, which I may not understand right now. Now, at that time, I was not diagnosed with cancer. So I continued with my life, but I had learnt this really important lesson, which I didn't know, but was going to serve me well the following year. So come this year, and all of these scenarios that have happened with my health and with this diagnosis, I was prepared. I was prepared not only because I'd had that situation where I had learnt what surrender was, but also because of my energy work, where I'd released all of these old woundings, this old trauma, this fear of what other people think, this fear of death, all these things that we all carry. And also my connection to Mother Earth, and my connection to my soul mates, my soul family, and my connection, most importantly, to myself, which included, nervous system work. And I won't go into all of the techniques right now, because this really is just, I won't have time, basically. But it was so interesting, because there were so many times last year where technically I didn't have like a 9 to 5 job. I was giving astrology sessions, but I didn't have like what other people would consider like a job in that sense. And so there were many times when I was like, what am I doing? Like, I know I want to do this, and I know that I'm learning something, but it's such internal work that it doesn't look like anything from the outside. Like, I just look like I'm sitting in my flat and then going to the forest and then, meditating a lot. And like, I judge myself because of the judgments of the world and society and other people, where you have to grind, and you have to be obviously grinding to be seen as worthy, to be seen as supported, worthy of being loved, worthy of respect. And so I had to really, really work with that in myself. And I still have fears around that. You know, I haven't completely released it all, but I did do a lot of work around it. And then it's so interesting because like now that I've had this diagnosis, I'm like, wow, all of that energy work, everything I did, it's come to this. It's like one of the worst fears has one of the worst, most people's worst nightmare, you know, getting a cancer diagnosis. I have received that. And because of this energy work and because of this spiritual work and this soul work, I have been able to walk through this with joy and with peace and with just a great amount of trust. And that's why I did the work. And I thought I was doing the work because I was preparing for meeting Firefall, in America. And that I believe that will happen at some later date. But actually, I was actually energetically preparing for something much, much bigger, which is this. And I didn't know on a mind level. I knew on a soul level. So that also leads me to something that I feel, you know, called to talk about, which is death. You know, and I have to say there is a possibility that you know, there's a big chance that I will live, but there's also a small chance that I may not survive whatever this is and that I may transition. You know, but there's also a possibility that someone could get in the car today and transition, or someone would transition from diabetes, or someone would transition from, you know, a variety of different things, DV, domestic violence, you know, all sorts of different things. And so I think one of the things that this has really called me into questioning is the collective energy around the word and the idea of cancer. Because when you mention it, or when anyone mentions it, it's got such a charge. It's like, oh my God, cancer. And like, even when I was talking to the doctors, they were like, God bless you, I'm praying for your family. And, you know, I hadn't even been diagnosed properly at that stage, but it was like, you're already putting me on my deathbed, and there are many, many people who do survive. And if you talk to me like that, what if I was vulnerable enough to just start thinking I was going to die and then just like gave up on my life? And also, I just don't feel like there should be this kind of charge around something like cancer. The way I see it is, it is a transformative health experience. So whatever happens to me, it's a transformation. Whether I, you know, thrive through this and I recover and stay in a human body, great. If I don't, I transition to wherever my soul needs to be next, great. Like, it's a transition. It's an opportunity for me to release whatever doesn't work for me, including cells in my body that have not served my full health, and also energy patterns and calcified belief systems and programming that, you know, do not serve me. And even in the last 2 months, I have had so many breakthroughs. Like, it's just been on turbo boost. I have died so many times, like just in these last few weeks, just going through this experience. So on a spiritual level, I feel very excited. I'm like, there is so much gold to be had here. Imagine who I'm going to be. Imagine all of the ways in which I could transform, you know, through this. Like, there's just so much gold here. And so I just, you know, part of what I wanted to do is just show you that it doesn't have to be this fucking terrible experience. It doesn't have to be a bunch of suffering. Yes, I am waiting for my treatment plan. And yes, I will probably have to have really strong treatment, which is going to make me feel sick, I may lose my hair. Like, there's a bunch of things. But at the same time, that's an inevitability, some of that stuff, you know, that I might be sick or whatever. But my suffering is an option. Like, I can go through that with joy and with peace and acceptance and surrender, and just like be grateful for everything that I have, or I can go through it like thinking, why me? This is the worst thing in the world, and just like really, really panicking and just like fearful and not enjoying the life that I have. So I choose personally to go through it with courage and joy and peace and acceptance. And I'm not saying there's not going to be hard times. I have had a couple of moments of despair, not necessarily because I'm afraid I'm going to die, but because I wanted to be in America right now. Like that's my dream. That is, you know, to work with Firefall and to do what I've been training to do my whole life. I I had to really accept, and I'm a willful person. If I want to do something, I'm someone that does push to do that. So I really had to be humbled in that and be like, I just because I egoically want this and like small me wants this, larger me has something much bigger planned, and I have to bow down to that. If I don't, and I can choose not to, I'll just be pushing against a wall because it's not going to come to anything and it's going to make this experience much harder. So, frustration was something that I have cried about, and allowed myself to feel. And if despair comes up, which, it will do, I'm sure, I'm just going to allow myself to feel it. It's part of the journey. And I think despair there's such beauty in despair because it almost invites you to release everything, and just be in this like kind of empty state. And in that empty state, there's so much that can grow. It's almost like an annihilation of hope. And as weird as that sounds, it's like it completely clears the slate for something fresh and new ideas and new ways of being to come through. So I do welcome despair. I think we need despair sometimes. That's when some of our greatest stories emerge. So also with death, I want to talk about death. So when my mum died when I was 9, we actually scattered her ashes on my 10th birthday. So that's what we're talking about here. This woman was everything to me. I'm sure a lot of you who followed me for some time know how important my mother is and was to me. And so my whole life was shaped around her illness and her death from then on. One of the things that I am so grateful that I did learn at that time was that life is fleeting, and that, these worst case scenarios can happen. And what are we going to do with our lives? Are we going to live it the way other people want us to live, or are we going to follow our own heart and soul? And I just knew that from such a young age. Like, I want to follow my heart and soul. Yeah, it may not make sense to many people. I still have people very close to me saying that I'm deluded, I'm this, I'm that. Like, I've had some actual abuse recently, verbal abuse. But I remain on my path because I know, and this has proven to me now as well, that you could plan all the things you want to plan. You can acquire all the money, all the accolades. But when your soul decides to go through something like this, what are you left with? Is the money going to help you? Is the money going to give you the calm and the strength and the internal guidance to get through this? No, it's not. Are the accolades, all the intellectual achievements, all of that, is that going to help you get through this very transitional time? No, it's not. And so that inner cultivation is so important. And I'm so glad that when I was 9, I really, really decided upon that. I want to know what life is. I want to know what death is. And it's so interesting because last year I had a reading with a really skilled reader called Pamela Aralin. And it was only a 10-minute reading, but she said to me, my guide said to me through her that I'm here to research something. And she's like, are you doing it? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I research a lot through experience mainly, but also I do read a lot, and I do, I research online and things. But it just occurred to me today that one of the main things I've been researching my whole life is what happens when we die and when we transition. I've been fascinated with this for such a long time. And so some of the ways that I've been researching this is I've been reading books like Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander. I have been reading and watching a lot about NDEs, like near-death experiences, from various different people from different cultures around the world who do not know each other, who didn't speak about their own experiences for 20 years because they were so afraid of being judged, and they finally come out, and there's this common thread amongst all of them, which is this beautiful thread of what they experience in those moments when they died, essentially, and then they came back to tell the tale. I have watched hundreds and hundreds of videos around that. I've read so much about it. I've also watched a lot of psychic readings from skilled psychic readers like Tyler Henry, and like kind of really just made my own mind up about whether I believed it was accurate and also what the common threads were. And, you know, as cliche as it sounds, like one of the common threads is love, you know, and not just this like, love, like just letting people walk all over you and being a martyr and like all that stuff. It's not that. It's like love of self as well, and what all the different forms that love looks like. You know, it doesn't have to look like being walked all over. That isn't loving yourself, you know. It's love. To me, being loving in this world is both having love for yourself and love for others, and sometimes that comes with having very firm boundaries, but it always comes with truth. And so for me, like, all of this is culminated, all of this research, all of this experience is culminated in this, you know. And so I just wanted to talk about death, and I know that that's one of the biggest fears. Well, I think deep down underneath any anxiety, any addiction, anything like that, is the fear of death. And I think religiously we have not helped with that. I think, you know, when you look at whatever Christianity is, you know, or whatever it's turned into, I'm not talking about Yeshua and Mary Magdalene and the real people who I deeply love and respect. I'm talking about the religion that was formed around it. You know, there's this idea of heaven and hell and judgment, moral judgment, and eternal damnation, and, you know, this idea of purity and goodness. And we, you know, even if we're not Christian, those ideas have seeped into our societal mind frame, our collective energy. And so, you know, it's there in all of us. And, you know, there's other religions that talk about that in a very kind of binary way, like either you're good or you're bad, and you go to hell or you go to heaven. And I think it's just caused such a misunderstanding of death within us, and such a fear around what's going to happen when we die. And so this was what my research was about, especially because my mum died, and I was like, where is she gone? What is going on? Why do I feel her so deeply, you know? And so yeah, death is such a huge and triggering topic, and I can't sit here and say that I know exactly what's going to happen after we die, but I can sit here and say I'm not afraid of it, because I have heard enough, I have watched enough, I've spoken to enough people, and I've had my own experiences of being separate from the body. So, for example, a few years ago, I had a panic attack, and I remember I was like over breathing. So basically, I'd caused it by like taking in too much oxygen, which is ironic. And so my whole body like froze. It like kind of just like froze into these like really like that. Like my hands were like claws, and, you know. So my partner at the time had to call the ambulance because none of us knew what was happening. And the guy said, you know, it's fine. Like you've just had a panic attack. But I remember at the time a very clear distinction between what was happening in my body and like how I was feeling. I felt very calm. I was like, oh, this is what's happening to my body. But I am a different being watching what's happening to my body, because yeah, I can feel this like weird stuff happening, but like I'm not that. And so that was one of the first like real experiential realizations that I am not like my body. My body is a vehicle. And so even now, like with certain symptoms I'm having, one of the symptoms of lymphoma is like, or Hodgkin's lymphoma is like having really itchy skin. And like, it's something that I have struggled with for a long time. And it's like, I know it's happening, but I also know that like, whatever I witness on the body and experience, like that's not me, because I can feel something completely different. I can choose to have whatever experience I'm having while my body is going through whatever it's going through. So it's like experientially I have learned through time and energy work and spiritual work and body work that like, yes, the body and soul, the soul lives in the body, but like the soul is not the body. This is just a vehicle. Because there's been so many times when, you know, I felt something very different from what my body is going through. Even now, like I feel very alive. I feel very, you can see, like, I'm happy, I'm all of these things, but at the same time my body is going through what we have deemed cancer. So it's like, if I was the body, imagine what would be happening right now. Imagine how I would be right now. And also I've read many accounts of yogis and mystics who willingly leave their body. They, towards the end of their life, they stop eating as much, they become emaciated, and their body as such is like really small and frail, but their spirit is absolutely huge, and they can do enormous amounts with it. The size of your body is nothing to do with the size of your spirit and the size of your soul. I know I have a very slim body, I have a big spirit, I have a big aura. Like, I can trigger people just by like being in the room. Like, I don't even have to say stuff sometimes. And then I'm like, why me? Like, I haven't said anything, but like, I know now, and I accept I have a big spirit, I have a big aura, I have a big energy. That's like, I am accepting that, and I'm learning how to live with that. But I don't need a big body then. I don't need to have a physical massive presence, because I have an energetic presence which is enough for me to do what I need to do. And everyone's different. Everyone has a different constitution. But I know that being as slim as I am, which is unusually slim, like to the point where all I've received is comments about my body and my weight my whole life, I've always been healthy. This is the first technical, like, serious illness I've ever had. I eat well, I sleep well, I do my meditation, on an emotional, physical, spiritual level, I feel very healthy. But a lot of people look at me and they're like, how is she healthy? Because, I have a very unique body type. So, that's what it is. I just want to think about what else I want to say. Oh, as I end this video, I'm not going to stay on too long. I just want to say to people, I know, once again, this could be very activating. I ask you to be mindful before you comment. I would love comments, but I do not wish to receive comments that are projections of other people's feelings about what I'm going through, because I've been very clear about what I'm going through. So I know traditionally people say like, oh, I'm sorry, but to me that's not helpful, because I don't feel like this is something terrible or negative, and I don't feel sorry that I'm going through it. And if those feelings are coming up in you, I encourage you to really deeply look at that and see what that means for you, because I guarantee it's not to do with me. It's to do with the programming we've received, the fear we have around illness and death. And so I really encourage you to like really inquire internally, like, what is coming up for me as I listen to Maya? Is that something that I can work on? Do I need support with that? Before kind of commenting without maybe thinking about those things. Now, the kind of comments I would love are, if this has helped you, like, please do share how this has helped you. I'd love to know. Because I think also that can help other people. So public comments are great because it can help other people read them and create that sense of like validation around this. And like, you're not alone, because we're not alone. I know I'm not the only person who's gone through this. It's funny because having shared this with people, like my friends, like they all have like a handful of stories about their friends who have gone through it, and many who are like climbing like the Himalayas now, or like doing different things. So I feel like, as much as there is all this negativity around the C word, there's just so much positivity that we don't talk about, where people like live through it very well and like come out of it not just surviving but like thriving, and like with even more appreciation for life and even more zest for life, and focus on what they really, really want and who they are. So I think it's really important to balance that. And for me, like, I don't like necessarily saying illness anymore, because I think it has such negative connotations. I do refer to this as a transformational health journey, because essentially that is the truth. I'm not going to put any negativity on it. I'm not necessarily just going to put positivity on it. There's going to be both involved, but it is a transformation, whatever is going to happen. And I'm sending this video now because I'm going to start treatment soon, and I don't know how that's going to affect me. I may not have the strength to do this video or to update you. I would want to, but it felt more sensible and wise to kind of share this now, so that you can see that I'm in a state of not knowing. I'm in a liminal space right now, and we can be in liminal spaces and be happy and be calm and be content and be, grateful. We can be waiting for potentially really bad news, which we have deemed bad. Not necessarily that it isn't necessarily the truth of what's happening, but we can be waiting for life-altering news and still be in a grateful space and a peaceful space. And that does not mean bypassing what is coming up, but it means working with what's coming up, transforming what's coming up, accepting that, and then releasing it, and kind of allowing emotions to travel through us, but not to kind of settle there as a permanent state. So I wanted to be the embodiment of that today, so that you can see physically that I have this news, and do I look terribly upset, and do I look miserable? Do I look like all is ending? No. So I just wanted to be that today. It's so funny because the three things that I've talked about in my life that have been like the things that I never wanted to talk about are grief, race, and now this, what we term as illness, but I call transformational health journey. And it's always the things that I never wanted to talk about. I never planned on this, and yet it's always the things that are my exact medicine, and the things that are my greatest successes. So when I had the call intuitively that I had to talk about this, I was like, I don't want to, but I absolutely know that this is going to be some of my greatest work. I absolutely know it. So I'm going to do it, because this is what you're calling. This is what the divine is asking for me, and this is what my soul is asking for me. So I'm going to do it. So yeah, with that, I am truly grateful for you being here with me in this space. I wish you all well on your own journeys, and I truly hope that this is received by those who have eyes to see and ears to hear and the heart to receive the medicine that I'm transmitting. And as I said, if this has impacted you in a positive way, and you wish to share that, please do comment below. If you DM me, you're welcome to, but I may not always respond, because it takes a lot of energy anyway. Even before all of this, I'm not someone that loves texting and quickly responding to things. So just to let you know that it's not as likely that I will respond via DM. But please do comment below if you feel called to. Okay, with that, I will leave you, and I wish you a wonderful day.